IU fans, so far so good. The Hoosiers have played a couple of games so far against non-conference opponents that they should have beaten, but not only did they win, your Hoosiers, your football squad has looked pretty mighty impressive in
Mm.
defeats over FIU and Western
And
Illinois.
victories
That's right, and
over, not
victories
defeats.
in the way they defeated those teams.
Yes.
Indiana won, great, but we're talking about a team that in week 2 set program records for yardage and for points in a game. So how much does this matter? Can we really get excited about this team going into the Big Ten opener against UCLA? Matt and I are going to dive into what we've seen so far, look forward to the game against the Bruins, talk about how high the ceiling is for this team, and so much more here on episode 333 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, where I am your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, this is like a natural point of transition, a natural critical point. Indiana took care of business. First 2 games against softer opposition. We all knew week 3 against UCLA was going to be the first big test for this team, but IUFB is 2-0. What are your main takeaways from the first 2 victories over FIU and Western Illinois?
The first victory, I'll go back to FIU to start. I expected the defense to look a lot worse than they did
Yeah.
against FIU. Especially since you're putting a lot of new pieces in, new D coordinator. They were really solid. And then, to add, cherry on top of the cake, if you look at how FIU performed in their last game against Central Michigan, the signs are there that, we did really kick some ass on defense against FIU. And then, of course, you held Western Illinois team to 3 points, which honestly,
Yeah.
they probably shouldn't even have given up those 3 points. If we're being completely honest, like they just let up a stupid drive at the end of the half for a field goal. Like other than that, they really just didn't even let them breathe. For the most part, I think what Western Illinois had maybe less than 10
I
first
remember.
downs in the game.
Well,
Like,
first of all, Indiana the first 21 first downs. I vividly remember
right.
that. And then,
Yeah.
I think they ended up with something like 110 yards, 120 total yards in the game. I mean, just complete domination.
Yeah, yeah. So you can't, whatever. One drive is whatever, but they probably shouldn't even let that up. They were that much more superior than Western Illinois. Offensively, I thought they looked a little bit shaky against FIU, especially in the second half.
Yeah.
Because again, they actually killed it the first half. They had 28 points.
Yeah. 24,
Or
maybe.
24 points. Yeah, 24 points in the first half. Not much more you can ask for from them. And the second half, they took the foot off the gas. And then Coach Sig talks about wanting to execute and having standards. And they come out the next game. And if this was a Tom Allen team, he would have talked about setting expectations and setting standards. And they would have done the same thing the next game. They probably would have taken the foot off the gas in the second half. They probably would have put up 40 something on Western, and nobody would be none the wiser. No, not a Curt Cignetti coached Indiana Hoosiers team.
Right.
They took the message of, hey, let's actually go out there and play like we're playing against the big boys and actually try, because these are the moments where you're supposed to do that. And they set a school record for scoring in a game. So the offense to me has been a fantastic, especially if you factor in the fact that we're down 2 offensive linemen in the rotation there. You're down. Donovan McCulley has caught, their best receiver from last year has caught 1 pass for 9 yards through 2 games, and we just set the school record for scoring. The offense is fine. I was confused going into the season who our starting running back is going to be. I'm still confused, but I'm happily confused
Right.
because it's gone from who's gonna put their head, just who's gonna stick their head out and actually from the rest of the pack and kind of uh you know show that they're superior to the rest of the running backs. And now I'm looking at the running back room and I'm like, I can see roles for like four of these guys. We have two guys in our running back room that are averaging damn near 10 yards a carry. I think Elijah Green's at like 11 something, and Justice
Yeah.
Ellison is just a shy under 10. Like that's
Incredible.
I can't even do that in NCAA football on like All American. I can't do that if I tried, and I have a Heisman winning trophy running back in year like 5 in Bloomington, and I still can't do that on the video game. So they're putting up video game numbers through 2 games. Last thing I'll say about the team, uh, the biggest surprise
Mm.
on the whole team has been the play of Omar Cooper.
Oh,
Um,
love it.
he has gone from last year. He had some flashes. I don't really blame him for not showing more last year, especially given the fact that I think he was injured or he was fighting injuries last year at
Yeah.
some point. And then you add in the fact that our quarterback play was just so abhorrent, um, that he really didn't get a chance to show it off. And now you have, Curtis Rourke throwing to him, and
Right.
he's putting on a show. I think he was like the third highest rated
Yep.
wide receiver by PFF this
Yep.
week.
Yep. And Rourke was
Surratt
up
was
there, and yeah, Surratt was
Surratt
up
was
there.
not yeah, Surratt was not very far behind. Like these guys are putting up some gaudy numbers. And
Awesome.
it's I mean, it's been nice, but now it's you've gone against a Power 5 team this week.
Right.
So now it's a put up or shut up moment where it's like, okay, if you can do this against Western Illinois and get the school record for
Mhm.
scoring, great. But go to the Rose Bowl and beat the crap out of UCLA, and you'll start getting some of that attention that this program I think deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was listening to you there, you were talking about surprises. For me, the big surprise has been not only the productivity of the running game, but just how wide open the lanes are created by the offensive line. I mean,
Yeah.
this is where I don't say this too often, but I really do think you or I could get 3 or 4 yards of carry with this offensive line.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I would only get
Hmm.
a couple of snaps to be fair. Coach Sig probably wouldn't put me in for too long, especially given the running back depth that Indiana has at the moment. But I'm fairly confident with Mike Caddick and Carter Smith and the others paving the way in front of me. I could probably snag 3 or 4 yards before contact. And then I'd be injured and cry my way back home. And then, and then think about the fact that, yeah, Indiana has not played a Power 5 team. Obviously correct. But that's not exactly been a walk in the park for a lot of other Big Ten teams so far. Never mind Notre Dame, right? RIP, Fighting Irish, back on Saturday. But you think about some of the results so far this year. Wisconsin, a team that everyone's pretty high on, was really struggling with Western Michigan early, really through the third quarter in their week 1 matchup. Michigan State looked completely awful against Florida Atlantic, but you know what? The Spartans deserve credit for bouncing back in week 2 and winning at Maryland. You think about Iowa, a team that, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, not Iowa, Northwestern, a team that really struggled Miami, Ohio, and a lot of folks say, hey, maybe Miami, Ohio is a solid MAC team, but Northwestern really struggled against those guys. And then Oregon, yeah, okay, Boise State solid, but that game against Idaho was really hard to watch from the Duck standpoint before they sort of got some breathing room there at the very, very end against an Idaho team that Hoosier fans are very familiar with. So it's not like playing FCS teams, playing group of 5 teams is some sort of 40, 50, 60 point guarantee as far as margin of victory. Yet Indiana's gone out and put up a whopping plus 98 point differential on the board through the first 2 games, taking care of business, looking good, doing it. Offense, defense, special teams, all hanging in there. I love seeing Nico Radicic make 11 out of 11 extra points in the game against
True.
Western Illinois. He's going to be useful at some point coming up. especially, I mean, potentially as soon as this game Saturday night, where
Right.
that field goal game, kicking game will make a pretty big difference. Overall, though, as I think about the Indiana's first two games, it's just such a breath of fresh air seeing how well prepared this team is for both opponents. I mean, I watch Curt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan and Bryant Haynes and Tino Sinceri, and the whole team looks so prepared. They look so ready to go on both sides of the ball. I'm so happy we don't have to wait until November to figure out who our best players are. Isn't it
You
great?
know, it's great. I was trying to think back to the last time I felt like we had an elite, like an elitely coached
DeBoer and Womack.
DeBoer and Womack. Yeah, that I would give it that. But I'm not even going to count that because now they're coaches at Alabama. That's like that's like
Greatest
that's a
story of all time.
I
30 for 30 incoming.
really seriously. I don't know how both those guys were ever at IU, but let's throw them aside. To previous to that,
I mean, look, I can only speak to
um,
my lifetime, right? And like I've
yeah,
paid close attention since 08, 09, and there's nothing. I can fairly say there's nothing outside of DeBoer Womack that is better than this.
I would say maybe um the Kevin Wilson offensive
Sure.
line play
Yeah, yeah.
under Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, him. You had Seth
I
Luttrell. You had
Seth
Darren Hiller,
Luttrell,
volume
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Volume one of Darren Hiller, yeah. But that first period
That's fair. That's
under
fair.
Wilson, I think that's the last time we really had elitely coached units. And now I look up and down this roster,
That's the
from the
thing to me.
quarterback room with Tino Sunseri, with the wide receivers to the offensive line to the D line. D line has
Oh
been
yeah.
improved
Well,
so much.
and we're going to talk about that in the UCLA preview. Have no fear. But especially on a team that lost McCulley to injury in the first quarter, I believe, of the
Yeah,
FIU game,
yeah, yeah.
and all this, like, I'm fairly certain right now that Indiana's depth chart is 100% correct. Curtis Rourke is the best QB, but you know what?
Yeah,
Taven Jackson didn't whine or moan or complain. Came
he's
in
still there.
came
Yeah,
in as the second string QB against Western Illinois and looked absolutely amazing. The throws were the throws were accurate. Obviously, small sample, but the deep shot to Omar Cooper, the one where Jackson rolled out to his left and found a receiver downfield throwing on the run, was wonderful to see. He looked. They brought in a mobile aspect to his game. He kept the ball on a pull of the play there, and then he scored later on the drive, and the pull by Jackson even confused, I think it was Ade Ajani, the offensive lineman. He thought the running back kept the ball, and now actually it was quarterback Taven Jackson who did as he went into the end zone. I love the fact that Indiana uses the tight ends in the passing game, specifically Zach Horton, who comes over from JMU, but we've seen James Bamba catch a couple passes. Nice depth in the receiver room as well. I love Miles Price. I've said it for years. Indiana, for some reason, after Whop Phillier left, decided we weren't going to have another proper slot player dominating the middle of the field, even though Whop Phillier was one of the best receivers in school history. Even though no one wants to admit that. Indiana's churned out a bunch of great outside boundary receivers over the years. Whop Phillier was special over the middle of the field, and Miles Price
yeah,
is somebody that you're actually able to use in that capacity, and Indiana's used him really, really well so far. But just from a preparation standpoint, now there are going to be games down the road where preparation means a little bit less and your in-game adjustments will matter a little bit more. Curt Cignetti's
mm,
got to show a little bit more from the in-game adjustment standpoint, but he hasn't had to show anything through two games because Indiana has
right.
had 100% likelihood to win each game that they've played so far after the first couple of drives, right? You go in against FIU, obviously the second half looked a little bit whatever, but they dominated so much in the first half that the game result was never in doubt. So you could play it close to your vest. You could take the foot off the pedal a little bit, Perhaps you don't want to show too much of your playbook for UCLA coming up on Saturday, Maryland, Northwestern coming up in a few weeks. So, all in all, I look at this team and it's incredible to watch games from the opening drive with a clear idea of what the game plan is from Indiana and watch this team go out and execute it. In the first quarter of both of these games, they've come out throwing the football, spreading the ball around, and then using some of that loose defense to attack in the ground game. I have loved watching this team look so prepared, so focused, so clear-minded going into each of these two games. And again, unlike a lot of other Big Ten teams so far, the result has never been in doubt for Indiana's first two matchups. So you definitely have a lot to look forward to. And this is exactly why Indiana's been favored against UCLA, has gotten the opportunity to be favored against UCLA going into this week 3 matchup. Now, I know there's been a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, Matt. There have been a lot of good things. There are a lot of impressive stuff so far. Any issues that have popped up as far as what you've seen through the first two games? You talked about the injuries to Nick Kidwell. Of course, that happened in the preseason. Donovan McCulley happened in the first quarter of the FIU game. Any issues that you've seen, even, or has it all been fairly minor and stuff that you can look past?
I think it's been very, very minor stuff. I will say, as far as the defense goes, the secondary has looked exploitable at times, but I'm not sure if that's just from inexperience or if it's actually like a real issue.
Sure.
And I mean, I don't know how you can complain about the secondary when
Chemistry.
they've given up 10 points total through 2 games. So there's a lot of nitpicking going on.
Yeah.
I will say there have been some big plays down the middle through the secondary, and I know our DBs will have more chemistry and get better as the season goes on. So and so will the defensive play calling, right? Like assuredly, you find out what works for your unit and then you kind of play to your strengths. And I feel like that's something that this coaching staff does really well.
Yeah.
Which is that they, through 2 games, have figured out, okay, what does this team do well? And instead of trying to try new things where they try to see if they can fix some of the weaknesses, they've just gone for strength and strength, like strength for strength. Like they just figure out what works and go, okay, this is how we're going to win football games this year. That's fine. Let's try to perfect it. Instead of last year's staff would have found out what we're good at and then tried new things to see if you could, bolster up some of the weaknesses where, if you play winning football, you play winning football, how you play winning football. And I think Cignetti and his staff, but especially Cignetti, learned this from Saban. Like Saban teams always had weaknesses, always, whether it was Saban's inability to recruit a kicker, or it was they couldn't throw downfield very well. You had Jalen Milroe last year, right? Who could do a lot of different things with the ball, but certainly was not a great passer.
Right.
So they would just play offense or play defense or play whatever position group they had to the best of their ability with the strengths that they had.
They dictated the terms of the game.
Exactly. And
they didn't let the opponent do that.
I've seen the same thing. Of course, it's 2 cupcakes. Don't get me wrong. My take could be completely wrong by the end of Saturday night. But through 2 weeks, I have seen a Coach Cignetti team that has done things the way I saw a Nick Saban winning program do, that you can insert any Kirby Smart winning program does, any of the high level programs. When they are winning, like a Jim Harbaugh led team, they play to their strengths and they dictate the game. They play the game how they want it to be played. And if you can beat them, good luck. Right. So I really, really, I can't stress this enough. I am so optimistic that I would actually I'm giving you a question right now. Through 2 games, I know it's 2 games.
Oh boy.
We're outscoring teams like what, 100,
Plus 98.
111 to 10,
Yeah,
right? Or something like that.
something like that.
Through 2 games.
108 to 10. Yeah.
108 to 10. Through 2 games. What is your final
Oh,
revised
oh,
record regular season for this team? Because now we've seen how shit Michigan is, right? We've seen how bad Maryland is. We've seen how bad Northwestern is. We've seen how bad a lot of these other Big Ten teams are, and how good Indiana has looked through 2 games.
6-0. 6-0 is like if Indiana loses before their bye week, I'm
Do they play Nebraska before their bye week?
no. So the
Okay.
next 4 games are at UCLA, home Charlotte, home Maryland, at Northwestern.
Nah, those have to be 4 wins. They have to
Like
be.
if Indiana loses one of those games, it's got to be because there's an injury that we don't expect, or a couple
Yeah.
injuries we don't expect, or you had some really fluky turnover luck that went against your way. You know, you fumbled the ball 3 times and they were all recovered by the opponent. There was a batted ball that, Maryland or Northwestern picked off. And
Or
stuff like that.
the team that returns a touchdown, does a
Yeah.
return touchdown,
Yeah.
drops the
At the
ball
one
at the
yard line.
1 yard line,
And
but
then they
then they
don't
just give him the
they
touchdown
just give him the
anyways, even though that's
touchdown anyway.
not
Yeah.
the rule.
Yeah. Atrocious referee decisions. Because I would be really disheartened. And again, I'm not saying Indiana's got to win by 30, but just from
No,
a win-loss standpoint, you like beat UCLA by 1 or 30. Like I don't care, but
I'm really not
I've
sure,
looked
Nathan.
I've looked at this matchup every which way so far. And I think the only reason Indiana's not a bigger favorite is just because of the history of the programs.
That's what
That's
I was about
really
to
it.
say. I've watched UCLA tape. Of course, it was 1 game, and they did play in Hawaii.
Right.
So, fair enough. They were probably really distracted, going surfing and stuff,
Sure.
as I would do if
Team
I
bonding.
had a
Yeah.
team bond. That being said, Hawaii's not supposed to be good, like at
No,
all.
they're
They're
not.
supposed to be really, 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 really bad, and you only win by 3 points. And I watched the tape, so I was like, I just got to see what's happening here.
Right.
I'm not, and then I was curious, so then I went and watched FIU's last game. I found the highlights somewhere,
Sure.
and I watched that. Are we sure that UCLA is better than FIU? Because
No,
I'm not sure.
we're not.
I'm really not sure. I think UCLA might be one of the worst Power 5 teams
I think UCLA
I
is
have
a
I've
10
ever laid
point.
eyes on.
I think they're a
Laid
10
eyes on.
point home favorite against FIU if that game happens.
They look bad. They
And
look
and
really bad.
and again, like, you could have had a situation like Oregon, Idaho, where Oregon, yeah, they only won by 10, but Oregon actually dominated every statistical category in that game. It's just they
Right.
messed up a couple of third and fourth downs, and it just sort of fumbled and bumbled that way. But I just have looked at this matchup every which way, and so to me 6-0. I'm trying, like, 6-0 has to happen. And if it
It
doesn't, there
has
has
to.
to be a really, really good reason as to why that it
So
didn't
so
end up that way. So after 6-0,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Nebraska's looked really good. Like, I'll give
Yeah.
them a lot of credit. I actually think Nebraska's a legit dark horse to make the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
If Penn State or Ohio State stumbles, Oregon, takes a couple of L's because they're really sniffing with danger there. Nebraska to me looks like a dangerous team. I think you split I think you split the 2 home games after the bye week, so you're 7-1. I think you
After
split.
Washington and Nebraska.
Yeah, I think you're 7-1 after Washington and Nebraska. I think you're 8-2 after that at Michigan State, home Michigan. I think you're 8-3 after at Ohio State, and I think you're I think 9-3.
I hate to be this guy, but I think it's 10-2.
No.
I
So you're
genuinely think
not
it's 10
you're
and
so
2.
you're which one of those four games between Nebraska and Michigan do we lose?
I agree that it's
Nebraska.
one
Oh,
one
okay.
of
Sorry.
Washington or Nebraska at home.
Mhm.
I think they'll both be really close.
So you're
But honestly, I
really
think
pessimistic
I
on
think
Michigan now.
I think Michigan is like 3-9 bad.
Wow.
Look, I have Nathan, I have Michigan fans. Of course I've done stuff with Ant
Right, right, right,
in the
right.
past and still do stuff with Ant.
Yeah.
I have Michigan fans telling me how good Jack Tuttle is.
Yeah.
This is how
Yeah.
far they've fallen. They are trying to tell me who I watched, we watched Jack
Yeah.
Tuttle play quarterback, and they're trying to explain to me that Jack Tuttle is the next coming of Jesus Christ. I'm like, guys, you
Just
you'd almost be better running triple option. Like put in Orgy and run triple option the rest of the year. There's no reason to throw the ball on the field anymore. Davis Warren is terrible. Orgy's worse, and Jack Tuttle is a walking corpse. So like,
oh man. Yeah, I mean, this
I
is the
think
thing,
Michigan is
and
that bad.
I talked about this also to I think I mentioned on this podcast before on our podcast, and I've talked about this to a few others. Like last year in the Big Ten, you had three legendary players and teams. You had that Michigan football team, you had the Purdue men's
Yeah.
basketball team with Zach Edey, and you had the Iowa women's basketball team with Caitlin Clark. And I don't care how great the program is, how great the culture is, but those three legendary level teams that will be remembered forever lost so much. And I'm just not sure how great any of these three teams are going to be this season. Now, look, Michigan lost to Texas,
No.
right? Texas is a legit national championship contender. I'm
But they put up
curious to see.
3 points at
And
home.
well, what I'm curious to see now, and we'll potentially talk about Michigan a little bit later in our Big Ten picks of the week, but this Michigan team now, they get USC at home, they get Minnesota at home, they go to Washington, they go to Illinois. So like a lot of these
Ooh.
games, it's like, what level of toughness do you have now that you've been dealt a lot of adversity, right? Like that's where you're excited to watch some of these teams grow and develop because they're 18 to 22 years old, and this is why college football is such a great product. It's what makes it a little bit different than the NFL, and so that's where I'm looking at this Michigan team going, hey, what can you do? Michigan State looked awful in week 1, but what do? They picked themselves up. Week 2 went to Maryland and won. Shoe on the other
I
foot,
just think
Maryland
Maryland
smashed
is bad.
UConn. Maryland smashed UConn. Everyone's like, well, this is a top 25 potential team. Then they come back, stay at home, lose to Michigan State, and now Maryland is like, all in chaos. So college football is the chaos sport. But Matt and I have both talked about this Indiana team now as 9-3, 10-2. This is our reality.
I swear to God, I swear I could see 9-3 too, but I think the ceiling is 10-2, and I think they can meet it. I
This is
think
our reality.
I think Nebraska is beatable, which I didn't really think going into the
Well, I
year.
mean,
I
Nebraska, right? It's like how much credit do you deserve for beating Colorado?
Zero. Colorado is a terrible football team.
But you won
I'm
by
pretty
a
sure
billion, so I don't know.
I'm pretty sure you could take any four defensive linemen from the Sun Belt, put them on Nebraska, and they would have gotten as many pressures on
Gosh,
on
Shador.
Shitter Sanders as Nebraska. I'm not saying Nebraska defensive line is bad. I'm just saying that's how bad Colorado's defensive line is. I mean offensive line. They are atrocious. They might as well be, guarding Shador with Matador, like
Yeah. Oh, of course, the flags. Yeah, the thing.
the
Yeah.
flag.
By
That's
the
what they're
way,
doing. Don't
Nebraska
attack
does
Shador.
Nebraska does come off a bye before they face us, so both teams will be coming off a bye week before that game in mid-October. We'll cross that
Bye week,
bridge
my week.
when
Everybody's got
we.
a bye week. Everybody's got a bye week. And UCLA's got a bye week before us. What's
Yeah,
this? Huh? Why is
that's
everybody
interesting.
they're gonna
Hmm.
prepare for us?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll talk about this Hoosier team more in just a second and start previewing UCLA. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. A lot of candidates to choose from, but how about women's soccer freshman Layla Serta, who won her first couple of Big Ten awards. She won Big Ten Freshman of the Week as well as Offensive Player of the Week in the conference, which is now 18 teams, by the way. Serta scored 5 goals in her first 2 games. She also had a couple of assists. Indiana put up 14 goals last week on the pitch in women's soccer. They beat Lawrence 9-0 and then knocked off Evansville 5-0 over the course of that week. So shout out to Layla Serta, Georgia native. So good for her for taking women's offensive player of the week in the Big Ten, as well as freshman of the week in the conference. So it's absolutely wonderful to see their men's soccer off to a bit of a rough start, to say the least. But that's how things go sometimes, folks. If you like what you're hearing, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. A reminder, if you'd like to follow us on social media, head over to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. Give us a like, retweet our stuff. That really helps us grow this podcast. Matt, this Hoosier team, we're talking about 9-10 wins potentially over the course of the season, but the first step to what would be a historic year of Indiana football is winning at the Rose Bowl on Saturday night. The Hoosiers take on the 1-0 UCLA Bruins in a battle of first-year head coaches. Curt Cignetti goes up against Deshaun Foster. Indiana, as of this morning, is a 3.5 point favorite on the road. As we pointed out back on Sunday over at Indiana HQ, Indiana is a Big Ten road favorite for the first time in 17 games. First time going back to 2020 when the Hoosiers took on Michigan State. The over-under for this one is 46.5. And so you do some math, the numbers project this one out as a 25-22, roughly, Indiana win over the UCLA Bruins. This will be
We're scoring more points than that.
The 7:30 Eastern kickoff on NBC. This is the first ever head-to-head matchup between Indiana and UCLA, going back to the long time historic origins of both of these universities. Matt, UCLA knocked off Hawaii 16-13 in week 1. It was a bit of a rough go. It's the UCLA offense. I'm not sure how far they've come along since their bye week after that week 1 win against Hawaii. It looks like a team that is led by their defense. What are your first couple takeaways as far as this UCLA team? How can Indiana take advantage of this Bruins team, who is a home underdog going into this matchup in the Rose Bowl?
They have they suck. I'm sorry. You want me to find some positives about them? They're genuinely
I almost
bad.
spit out my coffee there.
I'm sorry. They're just bad. I have watched them play.
This is gonna be clipped for all time when UCLA.
This is gonna be clipped for all time if we lose. Yes, it's true.
46-0 UCLA.
Yeah. Okay. If I had to, they have a decent wide receiver unit.
True.
Decent. And their defense did give Hawaii nightmares. But it's Hawaii. So I'm really not sure where they stand. And then they've had a week off. So maybe they fixed a lot of that stuff. Probably not. But maybe. There you go. That's UCLA.
Is this going to be an Indiana home game?
I'm telling you, it's going. I've been telling people all summer that, like, oh, you start your Big Ten play at UCLA, you better watch out. And I'm like, you better watch out for what? A home game? Like,
all I'm saying, it's a Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles.
It's a Saturday.
The natives. Are you prioritizing UCLA football?
On God, On God, I know probably about 20 people personally that are going to this football game. All of them not are separately connected. Like they don't know each other. So this is not like I just know a group of 20 people going. No, I know like 20
Oh,
people
I see what you're saying.
going, none of whom know each other, that I just know them. So, and they're all IU fans. So, some of them live in California. I've got people flying out from
Sure.
Chicago to go. I've got people flying out from Arizona to go. I've got people flying out from Florida to go to the game. Like I know a bunch of people that are going to this game. Are we not sure that this is going to be 65-70% red in the crowd?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think that's very much in play. It is going to be an absolutely gorgeous day in Los Angeles. Looking ahead to Saturday, of course, you'll get that golden hour as well, with the game starting at 4:30 Pacific time, and then as you near 7 o'clock there into the fourth quarter, you're going to get your sunset at the Rose Bowl, as we've seen historically on New Year's Day when we watch the Rose Bowl on TV. That's kind of the time that the game is at every year, and you're getting that once now with the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm personally, selfishly happy this game wasn't like a 10 Eastern kickoff. Just for that reason, it's going to be a made-for-TV event, to say the least. Yeah, UCLA is. I think I would power rank them 18th out of 18 right now in the Big Ten. I just would, and I understand Iowa lost to Iowa State. Michigan, ugly loss home Texas. Northwestern, rough home loss to Duke. Still, as I look at this, I think UCLA is 18 out of 18 as far as this conference is concerned. They do have some decent players defensively. Matt talked about their wide receiver. As far as Logan Loya and J. Michael Sturdivant in the room that they have there. But defensively, I look at Jay Toya, I look at Keanu Williams, I look at KJ Wallace as a nickel, coming out of the slot here. He had a sack against Hawaii. They have some good players on defense. Indiana's offense will be tested, I think, a lot more than the defensive group. I did notice that UCLA threw the ball called dropbacks 68% of the time against Hawaii, according to Game on Paper. So, it looks like this UCLA team is going to like to throw the football. I just don't know how smart that is when Ethan Garber's their quarterback, completed 50% of his passes against Hawaii, threw 2 interceptions. Their running game just didn't manufacture anything either, though, outside of Garber's. So Eric Bieniemy, the former Chiefs offensive coordinator who won multiple Super Bowls with Kansas City, he's got some work to do as far as this offensive group is concerned. UCLA not only lost Chip Kelly to Ohio State in the offseason, they lost defensive coordinator Danton Lynn to USC in city, in conference, and Danton Lynn has largely been responsible for USC looking like kind of a juggernaut through 2 games, especially in that win over LSU in the season opener. So, as I look at this, Indiana's offense will be put to the test. Hawaii struggled quite a bit to move the ball up and down the field. Hawaii had no running game against UCLA. So Indiana, a team that has run the ball very effectively through 2 games, hopefully they can put up more than the 51 rushing yards that Hawaii did in the season opener against the Bruins. Matt, as you look at this Indiana side of things, who are the 1 or 2 players for IU that you're looking to step up if Indiana is going to record their 3rd win of the season? As you look at the different matchups here, who are the 1 or 2 Hoosiers that you think can really take advantage of the Bruins?
Oh, I mean, it's got to start with first. I know it's not a player, but it's got to start with the offensive line. The offensive line has to show the same push that has over the 2 cupcake opponents, which I mean, UCLA. I'm just gonna get clipped. I mean, I might as well be put up on the video board at the Rose Bowl at this point. But I mean, this is our 3rd straight cupcake opponent. So like, you know, what else do you want? I mean, they're scrubs.
3-point
Anyways,
favorites, Matt. We're 3-point favorites.
we should be 30. Anyways, I don't care. I don't care. I have the utmost confidence in my guys. And so the offensive line should really make UCLA look like the group of 5 team that they probably should be. Anyways, continuing on, Um, I mean, can I combine Justice Ellison and Tyson
Yeah,
Lawton and Elijah
sure.
Green into
Yeah,
one group? Yeah,
Caleb
the running
Black. Yeah.
backs. Caleb Black as well, of course. Caleb Black. Just and Kobe Martin. You throw all of them together into one group. The running backs, if the offensive line plays well, then the running backs need to make good decisions, keep the ball, don't turn it over, no fumbles, protect possession. If they can do that, I think we'll be smooth sailing. I don't even need to give you a third one. I don't care. I think we should just run the ball down their throats, honestly. TBH. Don't care. Don't
Okay.
care.
I actually think it's interesting you did mention the trenches because as I look at this is the first time in a long time, at least when the opponent isn't dumpster Rutgers from like 5 years ago, where
Yeah.
Indiana does have a clear advantage on both of the lines. You know, you're talking about Indiana's O line versus UCLA's front four, as well as the opposite. Indiana's defensive line, run stuffers, pass rushers against UCLA's protection. This is a pretty lopsided mismatch, especially when it comes to Indiana's defense. Could I see UCLA's D line maybe pushing a little bit over the course of the game? Sure. Winning occasional snaps here and there, sure. But as far as Indiana's D line, Indiana's pass rush, and that doesn't even include the fact that Brian Haynes has aggressive tendencies, is likely going to throw some unique blitzes at Ethan Garbers, or whatever quarterback UCLA has out there.
Whoever
That
wants
would
to throw an
be
interception to our secondary. Yeah.
that's this is one of the rare times where Indiana has the coaching advantage. Indiana has the trench advantage. Indiana has the quarterback advantage. And so when I look at this, it's like, how have Indiana teams won games previously? Because that's the blueprint UCLA is going to have to use here, right? Indiana before this season has
Well, we
had to
we
win
loved each
games.
other because we loved each other. That's why.
Indiana has had to win games with a disadvantage in the trenches. A lot of times a disadvantage at quarterback. A lot of times a disadvantage in the head coaching matchup when you go up against Ryan
A
Day or
lot of
Jim Harbaugh.
times, a lot of times means that there was some times where we weren't at a
Oh, look,
disadvantage.
2019, 2020, I'm not going to
We were
ignore
still at
those.
the we were
I'm
still
not
at a
going to ignore
disadvantage.
those,
No, we were still at a disadvantage.
Look, all I'm gonna say is, and I'm including not just the head coach, I'm including the OC, the DC, it's the whole group, the whole group.
Okay, fine, fine.
Indiana.
Having Alabama's head coach does help. Anyways, continue.
Hey, look, Indiana previously has had to rely on takeaways, explosive plays on offense, maybe a trick play or two, a
Flukes,
special performance in the kicking game and the punting game. UCLA
flukes.
UCLA does have the reigning special teams player of the week in the Big Ten. Or a couple of weeks ago after the win over Hawaii, Mateen Baghdani had 3 field goals against Hawaii when UCLA won that game. And so if you get into one of those games where there's some strange explosive plays, some strange trick plays, UCLA's kicker is pummeling kicks in from 50 yards out at the Rose Bowl in beautiful weather. Now we're starting to get into some fragile, flaky territory. But it's just so surprising to me as I look at the trenches, how much of an advantage Indiana has. And as I look at that, I'm very much looking forward to seeing Indiana running the ball. You mentioned the four-headed beast that Indiana has as far as the running back committee is concerned. But I'm very curious to see Omar Cooper in this week 3 matchup. How much stock can you put into that week 2 performance against Western Illinois? Because I look back last year and every time Omar Cooper caught the football, I'm like, that guy's got to be on the field more. That guy's got to be on the field more. That guy's got to be on the
Yes,
field more.
I remember that. Yeah.
I want to have him on the field over Dickies Carter, over EJ Williams. I want to have Omar Cooper on the field 90% of the time. This year, the roster makes that difficult. Right now, Donovan McCulley's injured. We don't know if he's going to be able to go. If Omar Cooper, Donovan McCulley, and Elijah Surratt are all available, who's the odd man out? And if it's
play all of them.
look, it'll be then do you take out Miles Price, who's so effective over the middle of the field, or do you play 4 receivers and take off the tight end, or do you put the tight end on the field and go without a running back? I mean, there are a lot of crazy possibilities here for Mike Shanahan as he runs this offense, but specifically with Omar Cooper, if Donovan McCulley is not 100%, can you take that week 2 game, turn it into a big week 3 performance? And if you can do that, what does Curt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan do as he go into that Charlotte game, as he go into the Maryland game? Hawaii did have a 100-yard receiver. Ashlock on Hawaii is extremely good as far as Hawaii is concerned. Hawaii does have a very pass-friendly offense, but Ashlock had 112 yards on 9 catches and a touchdown. Is that going to be Surratt? Is that going to be Cooper? That's what I'm paying attention to in this game. Indiana's passing game did show some sluggishness in the second half against Florida International. Can you go into this week 3 game and really tee off? I'm specifically focusing on the red zone, right? When you get across the 20-yard line, can you make sure you complete those possessions with touchdowns? And if you do kick a field goal, is it because UCLA's defense made some good plays? Hopefully it's because of that and not because you shot yourself in the foot. So, that's how Matt and I see this week 3 matchup against UCLA. We're going to have our prediction as well as some Big Ten picks of the week coming up here in just a moment. But first, let's give ourselves a social media shout out across the board so you know where to find us, where you can follow us, where you can look at our content across social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. We have things all over the place for you every single day as far as social media is concerned, as far as our podcast is concerned. We're going to be with you here from now through football season, basketball season. The world just keeps rolling as far as college sports are concerned. So make sure you like us. Make sure you give us a follow. If you like what you see, dislike what you see, let us know. Hey, we're all ears as far as what we're doing here. So let us know as far as that on social media. Matt, it's time to make our prediction. Yep. As we mentioned just a moment ago, Indiana is a 3.5-point favorite according to FanDuel Sportsbook with the over-under at 46.5. That's a 25-22 final score. Prediction: the Hoosiers and the Bruins at the Rose Bowl, 7:30 Saturday night. Who do you think wins this game and by how much?
Hoosiers win by 80 points, set a new school record. No, I'm kidding. I think Indiana wins this game 34-7. There you go.
So,
there's your prediction.
I know a lot of you are listening to Matt right now, and you're like, this is just unbridled optimism and without hesitation. But Matt's been on this podcast for the last 2 or 3 years, and he has clearly said Indiana is a 3-win football team. It's been clear. He is not wavering. Right. And I looked at that, I'm like, Matt. I was like, Matt, they'll be Illinois, or they'll be Michigan State, or they'll be Maryland or Rutgers or whatever. Matt's just like, Nathan, shut up. It's a 3-win team, maybe 4-win. No. So you'll say when you don't like what you see.
I love what I see. I stay up until midnight plus and go to work the next day happy. I stay up until midnight to watch the game, right. Go to bed at 3, wake up at 7:30 to go into work the next day, and I'm still happy because of what I watched the last night. Yeah. Okay, you do understand this. I had to sit through years and years and years and years of Indiana football. Making me want to blow my brains out. I'm dead serious. I grew up a Florida Gator fan, so I know what good college football looks like. Tim Tebow was my idol. I thought he was the second coming of Jesus. Percy Harvin, Aaron Hernandez, Urban Meyer. Yeah, the rest of the crew.
It's not great. It's not great when you're bounce back from disaster guy is Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Palate cleanser.
Anyways, those Percy Harvin teams. Mm-hmm. And then, in high school, I watched Florida State with Jameis Winston and those teams. So I know what good college football looks like. I'm telling you, I see all the inklings of a really good college football team in this IU team, let alone in Curt Cignetti's program. I'm saying literally this team, like, to me, screams a 9-10 win team. And, I might be wrong, and they might end up 9-3, like Nathan says. I think Nathan might be right about that, but I really do think there's a good chance this team wins 10 games this year if you include the bowl game, and which would be, I mean, it's only happened 3 times in the history of school.
If we win 10 games, Curt Cignetti's not back next year. Like,
don't say that. Now I'm rooting for 8-4.
He's going to Florida. He's going to, Texas.
Oh, you're so right.
If Sark sort of stumbles at the end of the year, he's going
No,
to
they're not.
Georgia
Texas
if Kirby.
sorry.
He's going to Bama if Kalen DeBoer loses like 4 games. Georgia if Kirby Smart quits.
Look, hey,
Notre Dame.
If that's what
sing to Notre Dame.
If that's what it takes, look, I'll take a 10-win season any way I can get it. You just promote Tino Sinceri to head coach, or you go and, if it's the Kalen DeBoer situation, right? Then we just swap head coaches. We do a trade. We can have Kalen DeBoer back. You can have Kane, I don't care. All I care about is this season. I don't really care about what happens in the future.
That was a complete left turn I took there.
I do think, by the way, to answer Nathan's conspiracy theory, he's too old for another job. I really think this is his last. He's 64.
No, I am fine.
62, 64,
I mean,
62, 64,
look,
64.
What I would say is it would have to be a tier A job, right? I'm talking Florida, Texas.
It would have to be a tier A plus. Not even tier A. It would have to be a tier S job. Like, it would have to be one of the 10 best jobs in the sport.
If Ryan Day loses to Michigan, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Imagine Michigan goes 3-9 with losses to Indiana and the rest of the Big Ten, but then somehow beats Ohio State last. Anyways, I don't even know why I'm even picturing
complete
that.
Complete left.
We've made a U-turn and we're going in the opposite direction on the highway. No, I think you're right. I have been right on IU football for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I choose to believe with unbridled optimism that I'm going to be absolutely correct about this season. Though I did say at the beginning of the year, what, 8-4?
Yeah, you did. I was at 6-6.
I said 8. Yeah. I said 8-4. I genuinely think, like, 8-4 to me right now, the way I'm looking at the schedule, and I added Michigan as a loss in that one. I no longer think Michigan is a loss on the schedule. I think that game is up for grabs.
Washington looks a little.
I think Washington is iffy, but whatever.
We'll see.
Again, I think Nebraska, Washington, Michigan, those games completely up for grabs. I think Michigan State's a phony and a fraud. I think they're terrible. I think Maryland's even worse. I think Northwestern plays at a D1 soccer stadium.
Armstrong, Bill Armstrong.
Yeah, Bill Armstrong actually probably has more seats than Northwestern's field does. So I really like where the Hoosiers are at. Just alone in the season. And look, all I'm saying is, if Indiana goes 10-2 in the regular season,
right, there
is an outside chance, that we could be looking at a playoff bid.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if Indiana wins 10, it's in play.
If you win 10 and let's say you've lost to Ohio State,
right,
who's going to be in the playoff regardless, and you've lost to Nebraska, who, let's say, they have the season which both of you and I think, which is they could sneak into the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
If you lose to the two teams in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I mean, because then at that point you'll be like, well, is it the second place team in the ACC, the third or fourth place team in the Big 12, the fifth or sixth
ACC and the Big 12 are so
fifth or sixth place team in the SEC. You already did. Anyway, so look, I mean, my point was, look, if Matt doesn't like what he'll see, he'll let you know, and I do see the game very similarly. Like, Indiana looks professional. They look prepared. They look disciplined. I was watching the fourth quarter of that game against Western last Friday night, and there were a couple of chances where one of the third or fourth string guys could have whooped a Western player as he was going out of bounds. I think it was the senior Warnell, the DB, number 10. Coming in, the Western players going out of bounds, and Warnell does a good job to avoid a late hit. You know, how about the touchdown drives that Indiana had in the fourth quarter, where Tyler Cherry and Alberto Mendoza looked focused. They looked prepared. They looked like they knew what they were doing out there. Kobe Martin came in, looked like somebody that in a couple of years is going to be a pretty significant factor in Indiana's backfield if he stays the course. Charlie Becker looked wonderful on that jet sweep where he scored the record-setting touchdown to get Indiana to 76 points. He looked like a guy with some speed. He looked like a guy with some open field ability, but he also looked like a guy who was ready to know that a play for him was coming on a jet sweep to score a touchdown in his second ever college football game, and he didn't false start. He didn't line up in the backfield incorrectly like you see NFL players doing right now, getting illegal formation penalties. He didn't
all the time.
He didn't stumble or bumble at the 5-yard line. He looked ready. He looked focused. He looked disciplined. And then I saw that Curt Cignetti had a word or two for him as he was celebrating off the sideline. I don't know if it was, hey, tone it down, or hey, way to go. I don't know. I'll let them, keep that conversation private. But this is a thing where this football team, it's not about the level of the opposition, because even though Indiana had a sluggish second half against FIU, the result of that game was never in doubt. Indiana went into that game with an 85% win probability, and over the course of 4 quarters, it only went up because Indiana went out, took a lead, and then stayed comfortably ahead. That's what makes this team look different. Now, I also have Indiana beating UCLA. No question about it. I think Indiana's a significantly better team. I think this is a home game. I don't think there's any home field advantage here for UCLA. I think it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment just with the degree of difficulty. So I'm going to have Indiana winning this one, a little bit more low scoring. I do think it's going to be a 24-10 Indiana win against UCLA. I do want to give credit to this UCLA defense a little bit. And for all I know, there might be a garbage touchdown at the end for UCLA that makes this a 10-point performance for Ethan Garbers and his squad. But I just look at this UCLA team and I have a tough time seeing where their advantage is offensively. Maybe it's the quarterback running game, but Indiana had good practice with that against Keon Jenkins in the first game of the season against FIU, where they looked much better than they did last year against dual threat quarterbacks. And so I don't even know if I would qualify Garbers as a dual threat. He did put up a bunch of rushing yards against Hawaii, so he deserves credit for doing that. But I do have Indiana comfortably winning this game. I don't know. I think maybe the first half is a little bit sort of wonky, but over the course of 60 minutes of play, Indiana takes care of business. So Matt and I both have the Hoosiers winning this game. Matt says 34-7. I have it at 24-10. In both cases, Indiana covers. In both cases, this game goes under, if those are things that matter to you. Matt, Indiana UCLA is just one of many, many, many Big Ten games on the slate. Indiana UCLA is the only conference matchup on the schedule. However, a bunch of other teams play pretty significant non-conference opponents. How about Wisconsin hosting Alabama, Oregon State, Washington State? That one hosted in Lumen Field out in Seattle. So that's like a neutral site game in a sense. Maryland on the road to ACC Virginia. We like to make our Big Ten picks of the week every week here on this podcast. Matt, as you look at different point spreads, over-unders, what stands out to you? Any Big Ten picks of the week that you like? Are there any potential upsets on your mind?
Yeah, so as far as the spread goes, I like Washington to cover versus Washington State. I know it's a bit of a rivalry game.
Sure.
It's actually funny. Oregon playing Oregon State and Washington playing Washington State.
Right.
You have the Civil War going on, and then the Apple Cup.
Yeah.
which both games should be fun. Both teams are 2-0 too, going into both. All four of those teams are 2-0, which is pretty sick. Why is Purdue and Wisconsin
Yeah.
willingly playing Alabama and Notre Dame?
They
Why?
must have not expected realignment to happen.
They must have expected that they still had the cupcake schedule that would have been the Big Ten West. Why? I don't know. Purdue, I think, will make things spicy with Notre Dame because I think Notre Dame sucks. By the way, NIU beat Western Illinois by
Yeah.
less than
Yes.
IU did.
Significantly. I think 40.
Significantly less. Yeah. They were in the 40s, I think. Um, beat them by less, gave up more points, and then it went
39. My bad.
yeah, and then went and beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Makes you
I
think.
think Purdue, I think the upset pick here is Purdue takes home care of business at home against Notre Dame.
I love that.
And finally sinks their ship. I don't know why Notre Dame's a top 25 team. You lost at home to Northern
They're
Illinois.
18th. How are they? I mean, okay, you want
The
to Texas
AP voters should be. No, I can't say that. AP
Michigan
voters should
17th.
be.
What are we doing? What are we
You
doing?
should have to pass an IQ test to be a AP voter.
Like
That or you should have to name the starting QB of every Power 5 team.
exactly.
Because I don't think
Because
I don't think they
look,
actually watch the games.
because
I
folks,
don't think
Matt
they do.
Matt can do it. Matt, who's Georgia's quarterback?
Carson Beck,
Who's Miami's quarterback?
Cam Ward,
Who's Mizzou's quarterback? Brady Cook.
Brady Cook.
Brady Cook. Clemson's quarterback.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. I can see his face.
Supposed to be.
Cade Klubnik.
There we go. All right.
I told you. I knew him.
Matt knows ball. I liked what you were mentioning though, as far as the Big Ten was concerned, because the two that you mentioned stood out to me for sure. I was a little surprised to see Washington just 4.5 point favorites against.
4.5. In Washington State hasn't been all that impressive.
Again, I mean, they beat
all
Texas
of these
Tech,
games.
but Texas Tech almost lost to Abilene Christian at home, and I think that's a program that's going to be making some changes in the offseason. I'm going to start with Alabama, Wisconsin going over 50.5. Wisconsin runs not just boring John Clay, Monty Ball, Barry Alvarez, Barry Alvarez offense. They like throwing it.
They run Wisconsin's offense. Yeah.
And then, of course, we know that Alabama this year does not run Nick Saban, Trent Richardson, Derrick Henry offense. They run Kalen DeBoer offense. So to me, 50.5 is way too low of a number as far as, yeah.
It is weird seeing Wisconsin running a spread offense. Is it not? Is it not just a little bit alarming? It would be like watching Indiana run zone defense.
I also just don't get the point of yeah, you're right as far as that's concerned. But especially with quarterbacks that I just think are substandard, including Tyler Van Dyke this season. I mean, like, did you need to do this? Like, I don't know. I just don't understand the purpose of that. I also have Maryland covering 2.5 at Virginia. This to me is like a prime bounce back spot for your September Terrapins, where Mike Locksley probably tightens the screws a little bit in practice this week after a tough loss at home to Michigan State. Now Maryland goes to Virginia. They're only 2.5 point favorites. I think Virginia is kind of a mess. We talk about worst Power 5 teams. I think Virginia is definitely in the running there, even though they are off to a 2-0 start. To me, Virginia a little bit overvalued after an unimpressive win at Wake Forest last weekend. So I like Maryland covering 2.5. I'm not sure Arkansas State can't win at Michigan.
Thank you. I thought you were saying something,
Like,
I thought you were earlier, you were insinuating that you might actually be believing in Michigan a little bit. No, I agree with you. I'm how bad is FAU?
to me, well, this to me is like specifically an odds thing. I just don't really feel like Michigan should ever get 20 plus points at home. Unless you are playing just a complete joke of a football team. And Arkansas State isn't that. Like they're functional, they're competent, they're just a group of five team. And it's plus 1280. And we know what life is like with these group of five teams. When they get a chance to play a power five opponent, it means so much to them. This is going to be a noon kick at Michigan Stadium after they lost to Texas at home. It's going to be a flat crowd in the first half. I just think Arkansas State at 13-1. It's plus 1280. Shop around. You probably could get a plus 1300.
Yeah.
Like, I think Jalen Rayner is a decent quarterback. He's thrown for over 250 yards in each of his first two games. He can run a little bit. We saw Mikey Keene with Fresno State, make occasional impressive plays in that week one game. Look, I'm not saying put your house on it, like just a little bit. Like Arkansas State, 13-1. For a game that means so much more to Arkansas State than it does to Michigan.
Yeah.
I look, you know what? Michigan could easily win this thing 63-0. They easily could. But as far as value on the board, as far as potential for upsets, like that to me is one that just really screams, let's be a little bit more respectful to the Red Wolves as they head into the big house. As they head into the big house on Saturday. I just think it's a little bit harsh, especially with a head coach on Arkansas State that has seen the Power Five before and isn't that terrible of a coach in Butch Jones. Like there was a time where Butch Jones was like a really, really coveted football coach in Power Five circles. Now it's not that way anymore, but if very good chance I'm wrong, but that to me was like shocking to see. As we wind down here on this Wednesday, Matt, any final thoughts? There's a lot we talked about. I guess 9-10 win Indiana. Before you give your final thoughts, if Indiana played Louisville on a neutral site, who would be favored?
Louisville.
All right.
But not by much. By like 3.
There you go. All right.
And I think that would be fair.
Anything else on your end?
Shoot. Let's see. China's good, by the way. Thanks everybody for asking.
Sure.
Love you guys too. Miss you guys. I will say part of working where I work and English teaching is I have a ton of office hours.
Nice.
But I only teach like the lowest level kindergarten classes. Just like this is the letter A, and A makes sound and so you understand my office hours. I'm not really planning anything, so I've been sitting there all day on PFF and on analytics, and just sitting there watching college football all day.
So good.
And I can tell you this: I have never been more excited for an Indiana football season, outside of getting my hopes absolutely devastated at Iowa in 2021. But we will not speak of that. We will not speak of that. That is it's 9/11 in the US. So I've speaking of too many national horrors in one day now of bringing that up. So I will not bring up the Iowa game.
I think it's time
I had to attend in Kinnick.
For the Hoosier Sound to send an official statement that 9/11 and Indiana, Iowa 2021 are not the same thing.
They're the same thing to me. Okay. Wow. That was my 9/11.
China has changed you.
That was
China is different.
That was my 9/11. I had to sit there and get heckled by drunk Iowa fans the entire time.
Nope.
While I watched our football team have an aneurysm.
Also getting clipped.
That's fine. But like I'm just a clip farmer
We are
today.
getting canceled for sure.
Oh, I'm just gonna rant about this on the podcast because I've gotten to this point. Yeah, we had to make moon cakes.
Mm,
So there's like moon cakes are a Chinese pastry.
amazing.
And they eat them right around this time for the Mid-Autumn Festival,
Great.
which is this weekend. So all my classes had to make mooncakes, but
Yeah.
mooncakes are like globby, sticky bread with like a plum filling in the middle, and you
Yeah.
have to like fold them together and kind of clump them up and then stamp them.
Yeah.
My students are 3, 4, and 5 years old. They can
Wow.
barely walk, let alone talk. How are they supposed to? How the f are they supposed to make mooncakes? Hey, somebody
I don't
explain to
know.
me this.
This
I don't know how
is
that. I don't know how I ended up here. How this was my job.
whew.
I made 75 mooncakes today.
Wow.
I don't ever want to hear the word moon or cake ever again. Thank you.
That's it. That's the newest concession at Memorial Stadium coming up, 2025 for
Some
sure.
mooncakes.
Yeah, for sure, it's on its way. But you made a point there about like that Iowa game from a few years ago,
Oh, I thought you were going to talk
opening the
about
season.
mooncakes real
No,
fast.
no, 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 no. I got nothing else to add there. The season opener, right? So like it goes back to my thing about this coaching staff and everything they're doing just kind of
Mm.
making sense. Like I just love when football coaches make things make sense. You know, and
Yes.
last year, for example, don't don't run option offense with Brendan Sorsby and Taven Jackson at Ohio State, right? Like that's
What?
with the
Really?
with the substandard offensive line, right? Like so that to
No
me, I was
shot.
like, doesn't make sense. Um, don't wait until the end of the year, 2 years ago to feature Jalen Lucas and Dexter Williams. Took forever, right? Connor Bazelak started, but guess what? When you put Connor Bazelak behind a patchwork offensive line, it's not gonna lead to many good things.
Oh, he balled out this weekend.
Yeah, right. And like he's obviously got incredible arm talent and he can make a lot of different throws, but when you put him behind a patchwork offensive line, he's gonna take sacks, he's gonna commit turnovers, that sort of stuff. So this year, not only does the depth chart make sense, the snap distribution makes sense, the guys playing running back, receiver, D line, linebacker, secondary, all make sense. The schedule makes sense, right? Like I think Curt Cignetti deserves a lot of credit, and I know this goes back to the Tom Allen days as well, but like Tom Allen loved playing Big Ten games to open the season. Like he's on the record saying that he thinks it's a good test for his team. He's also on the record hating Friday football, but like I don't care about that as much. It mattered more to me about every year Indiana starting with Ohio State or Illinois or Iowa, and I'm just like, why? Especially in the transfer portal era, why would you do this? It's why I don't really understand why LSU puts big teams on their schedule in week one every season. Like I just don't understand. Like let the ball get rolling. Give your team some confidence. And it's not just with wins and losses or how much you win by or whatever. It gives you a chance in the transfer portal era to experiment a little bit, to try some different things without too much consequence. And like I told you about LSU, like Indiana's not LSU. So put Western Illinois on your schedule, put FIU on your schedule. You don't have to go out and seek a marquee non-conference opponent because you play a ton of really good teams in the Big Ten, especially now with four legitimate. I mean, UCLA's down right now. They'll be really good again in a couple of years.
Yeah.
No worry about that. So
That
you know,
program
yeah,
reloads.
17 other very competitive teams in the Big Ten. You don't need to go out and seek another non-conference juggernaut. Like Indiana's non-conference schedule should look like this every year. FIU, Charlotte, Western Illinois. Give me an FCS, give me two group of fives. Let's go roll the ball out there. Ball State, Temple. Like give me these teams, roll the ball out there. Let's play football. Let's get some confidence. Let's figure out what works. Let's figure out what doesn't. It would have been really nice a couple years ago or that Iowa season to like or what a couple years ago, instead of having Illinois week one, having some softer opponents week one, so you could give Jalen Lucas some second half snaps and realize, oh shoot, like this true freshman is a real game changer. He probably deserves to start or at least play a bunch. Like this is the type of stuff that Curt Cignetti is doing, obviously some of it is Tom Allen's work, but this is the type of stuff that Curt Cignetti is doing. It makes sense, and that's what I think gives me and Matt a lot of optimism as we go into the rest of the season. And so I love when football coaches specifically make things make sense. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 333rd show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. To make sure you don't miss any in the future, you can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.